Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay Sporting Goods, the Yider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polarcraft Boats, The Forward Corporation, Primal Tree Stands, Shadow Hunter Blinds, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to another edition of the Outdoor Magazine show right here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network. My name is Mike Avery, also known as, a.k.a., the Big Guy. And even though I've lost a bunch of weight, I'll always be a big guy, right? I mean, that's just the way it is. And I will always be a guy, I think, who loves the outdoors, who loves the state of Michigan, who loves to promote outdoor activities, who loves to get involved in outdoor activities, hunting and fishing and shooting and trapping as much as I can, whenever I can. It's in my DNA. It's in my family history. I've been blessed to make it part of my job, and I look forward to sitting at this microphone every week to share this passion with you, to share information with you, to share interesting people with you. And I appreciate you being along with me this week. On the 4th of July weekend, how did that happen? It was just Memorial Day. How did that happen? And before we know it, it'll be Labor Day. And before we know it, summer will be over. Now, I don't want to wish the summertime away, but I do find myself thinking forward to the fall and looking forward to the fall hunting season. But listen, it's kind of the unofficial middle of summer now. Have you been able to do the things that you want? Have you been able to get the things done that you had dreamed about all winter long and been planning in the back of your mind for months? That fishing trip, that camping trip, that charter trip, that drive up north, that getaway weekend. Have you had a chance to do it? Have you made the chance to do it? It's not going to happen unless you make it happen. It's not going to happen unless you take that break from work, unless you get away from the office, unless you get away from the shop, unless you make it a priority. It's very easy, even for me, and this is my job, it's very easy to get caught up in the day-to-day things that have to be done, the day-to-day minutia, the important things, the not-so-important things, but the things that make up our daily lives. And before you know it, you have missed an opportunity for an outdoor adventure, an outdoor experience, an outdoor memory with you or your family, you and your family. We got to make it happen. Got to make it happen. I am anxiously awaiting for the results of the Michigan bear and elk permits. We will know on Tuesday. I'll be going to the DNR website at like 12:01 a.m. Tuesday morning, honestly, to check the results, the drawing results. We'll see. We'll see. And that's another one of those things, right? You can't get a permit if you didn't apply. We have to be a little bit proactive to enjoy the results. I have been, though, on the water a lot lately. I look at this, and I'll be honest with you, this time of year, some of my, I should admit this on the air, some of my work-related activities sometimes suffer a little bit this time of year. Because I figure I've got about a 6-week period, maybe 2 months, to really take advantage of what I love to do in the summertime, and that's walleye fishing. So I sometimes I sometimes put things on the back burner so I can get out on the water. And I have been out on the water quite a bit lately, and I've got my deeper water, walleye mojo back, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. Been catching a good number of fish, having some wonderful trips on Saginaw Bay aboard the Angler Quest. And as I walked in the studio here this morning, you can't see this, but I'm holding What would you call this, Charlie? A newsletter, a newspaper? Yeah. Charlie says, yeah. Yeah, that was a lot of help. Yeah. It's called the News 5 Outdoors Saginaw Bay Walleye Circuit Fishing Guide. This is from 1990. Tony Wint sent this to me. Tony, I can't tell you how much I appreciate this. This is something that we put together, again, in 1990. This was to promote what at the time was a fledgling Saginaw Bay walleye fishery. And there were a series of walleye fishing tournaments around the bay. And what I was able to do, using my position at TV5 and my venue at the time called News 5 Outdoors, to combine these tournaments into a circuit called the News 5 Outdoors Saginaw Bay Walleye Circuit. And this is the newsletter, the fishing guide that was handed out there. Our list of tournaments were Freeland and Midland, then Linwood, then Sebling, then Caseville, then Augrey. And then in August, we had a championship out of Bay City. You open it up, there's a fishing map. This thing is so old, there is a list of useful Loran C numbers. Oh, my goodness. These days we use GPS. But it's, Tony, I can't thank you enough for this. And I'm going to go over this in depth, in detail. But it's really cool to take a look at that resource from the early days and what it is now. I've had some great trips out there. Martin Schindel, his son Hunter, Justin Crawford, and Joe Armanovich went out with me last weekend. They were high bidders in a charity auction we had to benefit my church's parochial school, Trinity Monitor Lutheran Church and School. The guys were very generous. I really wanted to get them on the water, even though we knew the weather was going to be iffy. But I thought, you know what? My skinny water is starting to turn on. I can just duck out there. We can keep an eye on the weather, and we can come back in if we have to. And I think it was because the weather was so rotten that the fishing was so good. You know, they say, well, fish don't know it's raining. Yeah, but fish know about, I think, barometric pressure. They know about, I don't know what fish know about. But the weather was bad and the fishing was good. A couple of interesting things. At one point, we broke off a planer board. Had to hand line it in with a fish on the other end of that. Speaking of things like that, I was out fishing with my buddy Scott Gatza a few days before that. Scott hooked into something that was, it didn't fight like a big sheephead. It fought like a big walleye, but it fought too much for a big walleye. Reeling this thing, and finally get it in and realize he's caught somebody else's lead core. Well, darn. Until we find out at the end of that lead core, there's somebody else's fish. And it was a fresh fish. It wasn't like it was something been dragging out there for days. It looked like somebody hooked it that morning, broke their lead core off, and then we hooked it a couple hours later. So there have been some kind of fun experiences out there. So listen, I tell you these things because I have been having so much fun out there on the water this summer that I want to encourage you to get out on the water, in the woods, on the range, the 3D course, the food plots, or whatever. Make it happen. This is the time of year. If you don't do it now, come this winter, you're going to look back on it and say, doggone it, why didn't we do that? COVID shut us down last year. Let's take advantage of what's out there this year. Speaking of COVID, Ontario has extended their border closure for another month. I think that effectively shuts down their bear season. Speaking of things out of state, did you see the Arizona Fish and Game Commission, or whatever it's called out there, has banned trail cameras? They say it violates fair hunting practices. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. That gets some people's attention, right? I don't know. I don't know what to think of that. I don't know. I hate to see it happen. But at least in that case, that was the Arizona Fish and Game Commission, the people who are supposed to make decisions on that. Compare that with these. I almost said something that might get me in trouble by calling the Kalamazoo County Commissioners clowns. Oops, it snuck out. What are they thinking when they vote to oppose hunting contests? Under what jurisdiction, under what purview, under what responsibility do they think they have to make a decision like that? Now, it has no legal authority, at least not at this point. But when we have a county commission voting to oppose hunting contests, what kind of a message does that send? And why? Why are they even worried about it? What business is it of theirs? It's those types of things that make me nervous. The Arizona Fish and Game Commission banning trail cameras. Yes, that is a concern that makes me nervous. But at least they have the authority and they're supposed to deal with such issues. The Kalamazoo County Board of Commissioners? Stick with your taxes. Stick with your roads. Stick with your infrastructure. Stick with funding your sheriff's department. Stick with funding your jail. Don't worry about hunting contests. It's not your job, not your responsibility, not your business. Coming up on this week's Outdoor Magazine show, after the break, Eric Lenz of the Lake St. Clair Walleye Association joins me. Then Drew YoungeDyke of the National Wildlife Federation wraps up the first hour. In hour number 2, I hope we can get a signal out of Lake Michigan for Captain Dave Engel of Best Chance 2 Charters, Nick Green from MUCC. And in hour number 3, we're getting ready for archery season with Kevin Pritchard of Jay's Sporting Goods, and we'll wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dave Minar. That's this week on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Sandusky on WMIC on 2 stations, 660 AM and 95.3 FM. You can hear us in Traverse City on WTCM, 580 AM, and in Flint on WTRX Sports Extra 1330. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Boning Archery. Michigan-based Boning has been a leader in the archery industry since 1946, when Roland Boning invented Ferrule-Tite to glue broadheads to, at the time, were wooden arrow shafts. These days, Boning continues to innovate, and they're celebrating their 75th anniversary. How cool is that? Check them out online at boning.com. That's BOHNING.com, boning.com. They continue to make innovative products for target archers and bow hunters, and I would bet that if you are an archer or a bow hunter, that there will be a Boning product somewhere in your gear kit for this fall's hunting season. I was saying in a Wednesday morning live broadcast here from the studio that sometimes people say, "Well, Avery, how come you don't talk about things from my part of the state?" And I apologize for that. I talk about things that I know about. I talk about areas that I have experience in. But if I haven't, I want to be as broad-based as possible. And if there's something going on in your neck of the woods that you'd like me to know about or you want to inform me about, do it. I can't be everywhere, so I do need your help, and I'm asking for your help. Send me an email to Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com, Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Tell me what's going on. That's exactly what Eric Lenz did. Lenz, I don't know if he sent me an email or if he hit me up with a Facebook message, but he said, "Mike, I would love to talk with you about Lake St. Clair and the walleye fishery there." And I said, "Eric, I'd love to have you on." And that's how this whole thing came together. And Eric Lenz, I appreciate you reaching out to me. How are you?
Thanks for having me.
So listen, tell me a little bit. I watched some of your videos online. You have a passion for that fishery, don't you?
I sure do. So I started off walleye fishing. We had a cottage up on Houghton Lake, and walleye is kind of king up there. So I got my taste for walleye fishing up on Houghton Lake growing up. And living in Metro Detroit, I have an amazing walleye fishery right in our backyard in Lake St. Clair. And I really started putting a lot of effort into trying to figure out the Lake St. Clair walleye. It's, we're pinned right between two world-class fisheries in Saginaw Bay and Lake Erie, but we like to consider ourselves as a world-class walleye fishery as well. And, just trying to do my part to promote the lake and promote the fishery that we have. We get a little bit overlooked with the world-class smallmouth and muskie fishing that we have in our lake, but for those of us who spend the time chasing walleyes, we know what we got here, and just like for everybody else to know what we have right here in Metro Detroit.
Eric, is that help me out here? Is that fishery? Is that completely Mother Nature? Have fish ever been planted there, walleye?
No, I believe they haven't. And, people ask a lot of times about the population of the Lake St. Clair walleyes. And, we obviously get a lot of transient fish that come from Lake Huron and Saginaw Bay that come to the Detroit River and the Lake Erie reefs to spawn. So we get a lot of fish that are passing through, but we do have a very successful resident fish population that spawns in the some of the little rivers and tributaries that feed into the lake, the Thames River on the Canadian side, the Clinton River on the American side. So we are really lucky where we have a strong resident population as well as a lot of transient fish that travel through our waterway. It's pretty incredible, some of the numbers of fish that we have at certain times of the year. And it's really an outstanding fishery, if you ask me. And I've fished all over the state, and it's kind of hard to compete with a Saginaw Bay and Lake Erie at times. But the population has been up through the roof on Lake St. Clair, and we've had some very successful years of quality fish on our lake.
You mentioned the Thames River. Has the closure, the inability for you guys to get over to the Canadian side, and now it's been extended for a month, has that affected your fishery or your fishing this summer?
Absolutely. Everybody knows that whether it's smallmouth, walleye, muskie, whatever trophy fish that you're chasing in this lake, the Canadian side of the lake sets up completely different than the American side. The American side has a lot more current. The water exchanges itself every 1 to 3 days, they say, where the Canadian side is 7 to 10 days. So it shapes up a lot differently over there. A lot of the bait fish seem to push over to that side of the lake come late May, early June, and it draws a lot of the larger fish over to the Canadian side. So we do have amazing fishing on the American side or the Michigan side of the lake. However, traditionally the trophy fish are kind of associated with the Canadian side. So it's been a little bit frustrating in the last 2 years because many of us know right where some of the fish that we're really after are at. But we've been pulling some really nice 24, 25, 26-inch fish. A couple of our Lake St. Clair Walleye Association members have pulled some outstanding fish this year, a 32-incher,
wow,
a 34-incher, which is absolutely incredible. It was caught by a longtime club member of ours, Joanne Cook, who, I couldn't even tell you how many thousands and thousands of walleyes she's caught, and for it to be her biggest fish to date is pretty incredible. And 34-inch fish is definitely a fish of a lifetime. So we do have trophy fish. They're hard to find. A lot of them are on the Canadian side, but still great fishing over here. We're really, really lucky.
Wouldn't you love to see that 34-inch fish in the wintertime?
Oh my God, I couldn't even imagine. It was just an absolute beauty of a fish, and she took a couple pictures of it and released her right back. So it's out there for somebody else to hopefully catch one day and get some more additional pictures of it. So just an incredible fish.
Well, you do have a fantastic resource, a beautiful lake. You're close to a lot of people. Now, I was down your direction a couple of weeks ago, in fact, just driving along the shoreline. And one of the things that got my attention, it was a Saturday, was the amount of boat traffic out there. How in the world do you get any fishing done with that much recreational traffic out there?
Man, we always joke, too, that it can be 80 degrees and flat calm, but around noon you're going to get that 3-4 foot chop from the pleasure boaters. So it definitely plays a factor into our lake. It does help us in certain senses. It seems like the fish are not very boat shy, so that helps us out a lot considering how clear our lake is at times of the year. But it's something that you have to factor in when you're fishing. Certain presentations just don't seem to work when you get into that really heavy traffic. It's just one thing that it's just another hurdle that you have to overcome when you're trying to figure out these fish and to stay on them. It can be very, very difficult at times, but that's another reason why the Canadian side is enjoyable too. Once we get into the summer months, not only is there trophy fish over that way, but there's a lot less boat traffic. So we kind of seek refuge from that over on that side of the lake. But it's a beautiful lake, and you can't blame people for wanting to enjoy it. And, a lot of us, we just try and get out really early, and usually by noon, 1 o'clock, we try and get off the water. And, you're in a pretty, 6-7 hour day already at that. So, we just kind of adjust accordingly, but you can't blame people for enjoying this resource. It's It's gorgeous out there.
Well, and I was wondering this, if because those fish see so much boat traffic, if they are a little more tolerant of it, and it sounds like that's the case.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like there's plenty of times you could be in 10 feet of water and running a bottom bouncer directly underneath the boat, and it doesn't seem to affect the fish at all. They're not very boat shy. They can be finicky at times, but I think the boat traffic helps you a lot. I fish out on Lake Huron where the water is gin clear, and the name of the game a lot of times out there is getting as far away from the boat as you can because those fish are so spooky. And luckily we don't really have to deal with that very often. But it can be, it is a busy lake fishing wise, and some of the well-known areas can get really busy with fishermen. So you have to kind of adjust, your presentation and what you're doing to get in kind of that combat fishing. A lot of us are used to that in the Detroit River and St. Clair River in the spring run, but it can get like that too on St. Clair. But all in all, everybody is out there to have fun, and they respect one another and try and give each other the right of way and stay out of each other's way so that they can continue to fish and fish efficiently. So it's it can be quite hectic out there, but it's a beautiful place to be.
You mentioned water clarity. The first time I ever fished Lake St. Clair was a long time ago, when I was down there to do a TV show. Bass fishing, believe it or not, but the clarity of the water absolutely shocked me. I'd never seen anything like that before. I mean, we were looking down, 15, I swear 20 feet of water, and you could see bottom like you were looking through air. And I thought, how in the world does anybody catch fish in something like that? Does that clarity vary from season to season or week to week? What is that like?
I'm so glad that you asked that, because this year that's been our number one struggle without having very much spring rain and runoff, and really what affects our lake more than the rain, I believe, is the wind. Everybody thinks that the rain is what dirties up the water, but in all reality, it's such a shallow lake that when you get a really hard wind in any direction, it turns over some of those shallow areas and muddies up the lake. And this year, that was the number one struggle that we had, is the water clarity was so incredibly gin clear that a lot of the traditional spring spots, when those fish funnel out of the Detroit River, they were way too clear, and those fish just were in a very very finicky mood, to where a lot of us believe that they were eating exclusively at night, and the guys that were fishing at night were doing a lot better. And no matter what you were chasing this spring, it was very difficult with the water clarity. And luckily, with this past week of rain and thunderstorms and wind, I've got my eyes out on the lake from a couple different spots, and it seems like there's finally some good watercolor. The weeds are finally starting to really pop up in a lot of the spots, and that's, I tell people all the time, this isn't Saginaw Bay and this isn't Lake Erie. The walleye are not the predominant predator. The muskies are. So while walleye want to be out and eating, they have to make sure that they don't get eaten. So the early parts of the year, the water clarity or the watercolor is the structure for the fish until those weeds get going. And without that structure for them to hide in, they just don't feel comfortable, and they're less likely to bite. So it posed a lot of difficult outings out there.
Eric, hang tight. Listen, hang tight. I want to follow up on this, but we got to take a break. I got a commercial coming up here. We're talking with Eric Lenz of the Lake St. Clair Walleye Association. Their website, LakeSt. Clair Walleye Association.com, LakeSt. Clair Walleye Association.com. can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Alpena on WZTK. That's 105.7 FM. You can hear us in Caro on two stations, WIDL 92.1 FM and WKYO 1360 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by MUCC's On the Ground program. OTG is a program to improve habitat for fish and wildlife across the state. For details, check out the Michigan United Conservation Club's website. It's MUCC.org. That's MUCC.org. And a reminder, if you want to save 25% on your MUCC membership, you can use the promo code MIKE, all caps, MIKE, and save 25% on your renewal or your first time signing up. And I would strongly encourage you to give MUCC a serious look. You might not agree with every one of their policies, with every one of their decisions. I wouldn't expect that you would. However, I think I would recommend that you align yourself with somebody. We are stronger in groups than we are as individuals. So find a conservation or a hunting or fishing related group that you support, that you believe in, and become a part of it. One of those groups would be the Lake St. Clair Walleye Association. Eric Lenz is with that group. He's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Eric, tell me a little bit about your group. What's the reason you guys are there? Because, you know, listen, I've been a part of volunteer organizations before. They take up a lot of time. They take up a lot of energy. They take up a lot of resources. So what's the reason? Why even do it?
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. It's very time consuming and demanding. And, you know, hats off to, you know, all of our board members and our club members who are actively involved in helping the Lake St. Clair Walleye Association. It was started. This is actually a big year for us. July of this year will be our 45th anniversary. And
Wow.
The club was started really to prevent some of the commercial fishing on both sides of the lake on Lake St. Clair, also to make sure that there was proper adequate access on the lake for fishermen, and obviously conservation and preservation of our natural resource. And many of us, you know, we look to the outdoors for an escape from everyday reality and our busy work lives, and we actually get ourselves even more busy by involving ourselves in these clubs. But, you know, to a lot of us, it means a lot, you know, the next generation, preserving things for the next generation, getting kids involved, making them understand the importance of our natural resources. And I think that people are more likely to take care of the natural resources we have when they actually are exposed to it or out able to enjoy it. And, you know, we're currently sitting at 356 members, which we're really proud of. We're set a target goal of 400 members this year. I think that we'll be able to achieve. We're going to have a big party on July 21st. That's a weekly member or a monthly membership meeting. We have it every Wednesday, or the third Wednesday of every month. It's at the American Legion Hall at 401 Groesbeck in Mount Clemens. And we're actually very fortunate this month. We're going to have Bruce and Nick DeShano are going to come from Offshore Tackle, talk a little bit about their history with offshore and some of the products that they have. A lot of our club members are strong advocates of offshore tackle products. So we're really looking forward to that. And, you know, keeping kids involved. It's a great club in order to learn the lake. A lot of people move here to get relocated for work and other reasons, and want to learn more about fishing the lake. And there's no better place than a local club. You've got a lot of knowledge, a lot of people who share the same passion, who want to share that passion with others. And, you know, it is a lot of work and it is demanding, but, you know, I don't think any of us would change any bit of it. It's something that we really, really enjoy. And the time and effort we put into it, it's rewarded. It definitely feels good to see new people enjoying the lake and new people being a part of our club.
Just curious, what's the status of that commercial fishery now, 45 years later?
Well, no commercial fishing on our lake.
Okay.
So fortunately, you know, they've really there's been a couple motions. The Canadian side really wants to push for commercial fishing, and we've are doing our best to try and stop that. The sportsman through their licenses is the primary donor in preserving our natural resource, and we want to see it continue to succeed and the fishery to thrive, and for people to be able to go out, take their kids out, and have a really good day of fishing and not struggle to put a limit together. So it's been a fight, but we're kind of winning the battle, and access has been difficult at times. There's a lot of construction going on with our launches. There's limited access, and we're actually in the process of raising money for a fish cleaning station at one of our access points. So, even though this is a very busy pleasure boating lake, we are definitely trying to make sure that the fishermen get the things that they need as well on this lake.
Eric, I appreciate you reaching out. I've enjoyed the conversation. Good luck to you, and let's stay in touch.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Eric Lenz of the Lake St. Clair Walleye Association, their website, Lake St. Clair Walleye Association.com. This group is a good representation of a lot of the sportsmen's groups around the state, and I would strongly encourage you, if you have an interest in hunting or fishing or shooting or trapping, find one of these local groups, become a part of it. You might get sucked in. You might end up putting a lot of time into it, but it can be very, very rewarding. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll wrap up the first hour of this week's show with Drew YoungeDyke of the National Wildlife Federation right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Taos on WIOS, AM and FM, 1480 AM, 106.9 FM. You can hear us in St. Joe on WSJM, 94.9 FM. And north of the bridge in the Sioux on ESPN 1400 WKNW. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by the Linwood Beach Marina and Campground. Linwood Beach can be your year-round Saginaw Bay fishing destination and your Mid-Michigan Tracker and Angler Quest headquarters. Linwood Beach was the very first Angler Quest dealer in the country. And now it's like Angler Quest Central. And the fishing's been very good on Saginaw Bay. Linwood Beach, a great place to launch. They got a great ship store there, great launch. They can work on your boat if you need it, and they can give you information as well. Check them out online at linwoodbeachmarina.com, linwoodbeachmarina.com. While you're online, a couple of places I would direct you to. One would be nwf.org. That's the website of the National Wildlife Federation. And if you're on Instagram, check out Michigan Outside. That's the personal page of Drew YoungeDyke. Drew is with the National Wildlife Federation, and he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Drew, welcome back. How have you been?
I've been good, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
Listen, always a pleasure. I don't know, we hadn't talked for a while. I just wanted to check in and see how things are going. Haven't heard much about Asian carp lately, the battle against Asian carp. You have been intimately involved in that for years, both at MUCC and now at the national level. I just wonder, is anything going on, Drew?
Yeah, so remember the big thing that we got done is we finally got Congress to approve the plan to stop Asian carp at the Brandon Road Lock and Dam location. So now that plan is underway. It's kind of in this kind of dark period where Congress has approved it. Michigan and Illinois came to an agreement on funding the pre-construction engineering and design phase. So now they're doing that work. They're in that kind of dark period of doing the pre-construction engineering and design. You're probably not going to hear a lot of news articles about it because of that. So what we're trying to do is just remind people that it's still out there, still working on it, still trying to make sure that we're funding and all of those things that we fund through the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, the monitoring, the testing, monitoring throughout the Great Lakes to make sure they haven't gotten in, testing out new technologies in other parts of the country. That's all still going on.
And I saw, too, that a film that you guys made about this whole issue got some national recognition. Tell me more about that, and congrats.
Thank you. Yeah, so last year we released the film Against the Current about the invasive carp problem that's really the threat they pose to the Great Lakes and the problem they currently make in places like Indiana and Tennessee. There's an organization called 2% for Conservation. What they do is they certify businesses that donate at least 1% of their time and money to conservation. They started hosting a few years ago the National Conservation Media Awards. People like Steven Ranella and Randy Newberg have won these, and this year our invasive carp film actually got second place in that.
Nice.
We just found that out last week, so we're pretty proud of that.
Well, and you should be. Congrats again. And Drew, I tell you, you're cleaning up on these awards at Michigan Outdoors Writers, GLOW, the Association of Great Lakes Outdoor Writers. I think you've won some national outdoor writing awards for your articles and your podcasts. So good for you.
Thank you. And, the special thing about this film is we worked with tons of partners on it. We worked with Jordan Brown of Michigan Outdoors TV to edit and film it. We worked with our affiliates in Tennessee, Indiana, and Illinois. We worked with the Little Traverse Bay Band of Odawa Indians. We worked with Ali Shakur, who you've had on the show too, to give us a scientific perspective. So being able to include lots of great friends and partners in this film, it's really kind of an award for all of us, and we're pretty proud of that.
Drew, you mentioned the affiliates, affiliates of National Wildlife Federation. Remind us how this works, because, again, as I've told you many times, before you became involved with this group, I had a different perception of it than I do now.
Yeah, so we work the same way that Michigan United Conservation Clubs works. In fact, Michigan United Conservation Clubs is our Michigan affiliate. So our affiliates get together every year. They propose policy resolutions, and they vote at our annual meeting, which we actually just had a couple weeks ago. And at that annual meeting, they vote what our conservation policy resolutions are. That directs the positions we take on national conservation and environmental issues. So, for instance, a couple weeks ago, they all got together and they approved that we're going to support the Keep America Beautiful program. That's kind of the Biden administration's, you might have heard of it, referred to as 30 by 30. We're going to support that, but make sure that it includes things like private lands and open access for hunting and fishing. We're going to support a new civilian climate corps, kind of like the old Civilian Conservation Corps, but make sure that it's equitably implemented. So they approve our policy resolutions on things like that. So we don't just make this up as staff. We might recommend things as staff, but our affiliates across the country representing hunters and anglers, about half, and then the other half kind of representing environmentalists. When they agree, that becomes our policy.
Yeah, my concern was that you were an anti-hunting group, but that's I know that's not the case. You represent all different types of groups, but there's a pro-hunting element as well. And Drew, I appreciate that. Always a pleasure, my friend. Let's talk again soon.
Thank you, Mike.
Drew YoungeDyke of the National Wildlife Federation, the website nwf.org. And if you want to follow Drew's personal adventures in the outdoors, check him out on Instagram as Michigan Outside. We'll take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back in hour number 2, my fingers are crossed. I am cautiously optimistic we can check in with Dave Engel of Best Chance 2 Charters. He's on the lake this morning. Then we'll check in with Nick Green of MUCC and wrap up the hour with this week's Ask Avery segment right here on Outdoor Magazine.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay Sporting Goods, the Yider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polarcraft Boats, The Forward Corporation, Primal Tree Stands, Shadow Hunter Blinds, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to hour number 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine show right here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network. So glad to have you along with us as we celebrate the 4th of July, halfway through the unofficial halfway point of the summer. I hope that you are getting a chance to enjoy this summer, and if not, please make plans to take advantage of the rest of the summer, because before you know it, and I hate to be that guy. But before you know it, summertime will be gone. This is a radio show, Outdoor Magazine Radio, heard on more than 24 stations across the great state of Michigan. And I feel the need to point that out every week because there's the line between broadcasting and podcasting is being blurred more and more. I love podcasts. I do podcast. I make a podcast version of the radio show available, but I do think the best way to listen to Outdoor Magazine Radio, if you can, is on your local AM or FM station. Because for one thing, they get the content of the show before I upload it as a podcast. And I there's something about radio. It's like the original social media, right? So I'm a big fan of radio and would encourage you to check out your local station. If for some reason your local station doesn't carry the show or doesn't carry all 3 hours of the show, isn't it nice to know that there is a podcast backup available? You can hear that on the website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. You can hear it on my Facebook page. You can hear it on Amazon Music, Audible, Avery Outdoors on Twitter, on LinkedIn, iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Spotify, TuneIn, you know the list by now, Stitcher, Player FM, DeezerRadio.com, and even YouTube. So lots of ways to get the content of the show. I also produce monthly podcasts for Jay's Sporting Goods, Offshore Tackle, Angler Quest Boats, Killer Food Plots, Polar Craft Boats, and Shadow Hunter Blinds. In fact, when we are done recording this week's radio show, we will record this week's Shadow Hunters Blind Beyond the Blind podcast. But I want to not waste any more time here because our guest this hour, the first part of this hour, is out on Lake Michigan. He's on a charter right now. We think we have a good cell signal, so I don't want to waste it away. I want to talk with Dave Engel, longtime Lake Michigan charter captain, Best Chance 2 Charters, Best Chance 2, TOO.com. And he joins us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line from Lake Michigan. Dave, how are you? How's the cell?
It's working great.
Hey, that sounds great. How are you, my friend?
Well, it's been a good challenging year. I'll have to say that.
Now, why? Yeah, okay. I was going to say, why challenging?
The weather has been least in favor most of the time. You know, we've had a lot of active weather on Lake Michigan. It's been a cold spring with a lot of north winds, and recently it's been a lot of rain, which I don't have to talk about too loud. But it's just been, it's kind of been one of those years a little bit. But fishing's still holding up. It's still a good fishery. We're doing well. I just ran downstairs because we just boated a really nice king, which you like to see this time of day. Kind of wakes everybody up and gets them fired up again.
And I want to talk about that in a minute, but I got to follow up on this weather. Does the weather affect the fishing or just the fisherman's ability to get out to the fish?
I would say, we're always following the weather. If we get a lot of south warm winds, which is a normal spring, warms the water up. Keeps the bait fish, pushes everything to the north and along the shorelines. When it's cold and it keeps everything pinned in the south end of the lake, which their fishery is on fire now, Michigan City, New Buffalo, all the way around to East Chicago. They're just, it's lights out. They got all the bait. They got all the warm water. It's just finally kind of working its way up here to Saugatuck, which is about a month late, really. So, the tournaments that have been north of here have struggled to even get their 10 or 12 fish 2 days. So, it's definitely slowed the fishery down, being a colder, wet, dreary spring, I guess. Even though we had a few hot days, but they were all in 1 week, and it went right back, to being cold and rainy.
So do you think then that the good king fishery will not develop in the northern part of the lake till later than normal as well? Does that make sense?
If I was to guess, but Mike, when you got a year that's unpredictable, which this season has been, is just what always happens doesn't happen. We didn't have the great king fishery in the month of May, like we've had many years in a row now. That's been actually, it's been better fishing in May than in August for kings in recent years for us, and that just never materialized. You would catch a few, just like today. We got a couple kings, and that's kind of the way it was. 3 or 4 or 5 kings was a good catch instead of our limit and go in. It just never really materialized.
And you mentioned too a minute ago that it gets your attention when you get a big king mid-morning like this. As we're talking to you right now, it's like just after 10 o'clock in the morning. Why is that the case? Why is that? I don't want to say unusual, but why does that get your attention?
Well, the king bites at daylight. We make a big emphasis to get the guys here as early as possible. Get out here first thing. It seems like you do better in that first half hour or hour for the big kings than you do in the rest of the day, or it comes late mid-morning, almost time to go in. Seems like you always get a fish or two, or maybe even the biggest one for whatever reason, but definitely not a steady bite by no means. That daylight thing is always the best, first thing in the morning, last thing at night for kings. They're more that way than any other fish. We can pick off the coho and steelhead, especially in the middle of the day. And, of course, lake trout are our go-to fish, this time of day. We just caught like 4 or 5 lake trout in a row. And we got a group of kids. They were a little late getting here. Matter of fact, real late getting here, an hour and a half this morning.
Oh, jeez.
So we were, you try not to make a big deal out of it. So we missed that first bite, but we've done really well since. And the kids are good, catching the trout. And we caught a couple coho salmon. And this big king, the oldest boy, it was his turn. And he went through everything just the way you remember it being. We got our lines way out and down trying to catch trout now, and he took a trip through the whole boat just to wake us up.
Oh, boy. Well, you talk about getting out there at first light. This time of year, that makes for a long day for a captain, doesn't it?
Well, it's funny you bring that up. I just realized I've been doing this 42 years. And I do 1 trip a day. And I tell people that. I go, hey, I've been doing it 42 years. I'm done. All my buddies that fish 2 trips a day are divorced or burned out or quit. And I just do the 1 trip a day, a 7-hour trip. And I still look forward to going every day. To get in at a decent hour and sit around the dock. And the kids run 2 trips a day. both my boys fish. I don't know if you're aware of that. But,
yep.
My son Hunter, Best Chance, and my son Zach. Best Chance Junior, we call the boat. And, we got one going right now. The guys are jumping around back there. Good. So, it's kind of fun having the family do it as we have for generations. There's both my brothers fish, my uncles and stuff. So it's still a family-run owned business down here.
Well, it is wonderful that after 42 years you still love being out there. But when you talk about your family, I mean, your family goes way back. You didn't start out as your family didn't start out as charter captains. They started out commercial fishermen, right?
That is correct. Yeah, my grandpa and my father both did it. I can remember my grandpa laying on the floor for like 20 days because he hurt his back lifting the transmission out of a fish tug because he had got down there and was pushing it out and the guys were pulling and somebody slipped. And, those are the memories you have of those kind of things as you get older.
Do you think your granddad would recognize the lake, recognize the fishery that's out there now compared to what he was out there day-to-day facing?
Oh, no. Well, you must know the commercial fishermen hated the sport fishermen. I mean, I remember telling my dad I wanted to borrow some money to buy a boat and do this, and he said, I'll loan you $20 to get your head examined. They just didn't. That was never. He said I can remember as plain as day. He said, if you think people are going to pay you to take them fishing out there, you're out of your head, kid. But it was the only option we had at that point of my life. If you wanted to be a fisherman out like Michigan, this is what you had to do.
Well, and you've done it very well for 42 years now. We're talking with Captain Dave Engel of Best Chance Charters. Dave, we're going to put you on hold during this commercial break. I think our cell signal is going to hold up, and I look forward to talking to you at the end if you can stick around.
Sure.
All right, Captain Dave Engel of Best Chance 2 Charters, Best Chance 2 and TOO.com. He's been out there 42 years, but you think about this. He's got 2 sons now who are charter captains. His family goes back generations. His granddad was a commercial fisherman, so I'd love to be able to get into his brain. In fact, after the break, I'm going to try to do this. When he heads out in the morning, what is he looking at? What is he thinking about? What is he reading? What the surface temp, the wind direction, the sky? I mean, he's got generations of knowledge there that he's relying on. Wouldn't that be interesting to be able to look at it like that? And we'll talk more about that with Dave Engel after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Port Huron on WPHM 1380 AM. You can hear us in Muskegon on WKBZ 1090 AM and north of the bridge in Newberry on WNBY 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Wilds Plumbing and Heating. From plumbing, heating, air conditioning, sump pumps, ductwork, cleaning, you name it. Everything to keep your house running smoothly. The mechanical parts of your house running smoothly to keep you warm or cool, depending on the season. And dry, the folks from Wilds can help you out, as they have done for me for so many years. Check them out online at wildsplumbingandheating.com. That's wildsplumbingandheating.com. While you're online, check out my website, please, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. And head on over to bestchance2.com, and 2 is TOO, bestchance2.com. The website of Captain Dave Engel. He's been a Lake Michigan charter captain for 42 years. He's got 2 sons who are out there, a multi-generational fishing family. And Dave, I got to ask you, when you head out in the morning, what are the factors that you're looking at? I mean, you've got a wealth of information. You've got years of experience. What goes through your mind as you clear the pier heads in the morning?
Well, I got to tell you, that used to be a big question, because until you got out there and lowered your probe in the water or got to see the lake, kept track of the wind all night, what happened, it was a real challenge to just figure out where you should be and what you should be doing. You had to go monitor the water temperature. But with these buoys that are offered now up and down the lake, we could literally go online, take a look at what the water temperature is on the surface, on the bottom, current direction, wind direction, how wavy it may be. We used to always go look at the lake. Now we can just go out there and go, hey, it's rough, guys. And it's, coming from this way and doing that, and it's not going to be pretty, or shouldn't be a problem. It's windy, but it's not windy on the lake. So it's changed a lot. Technology's changed a lot, just as you were describing about the way you broadcast and podcast and magazines, and this whole fishery has changed the same way. But we're always chasing the water temperature and the good water. What's happened with the mussels? The zebra mussels, messed up the first 40 or 50 feet of water. Made it too clean and kind of changed that onshore lakeshore and lake perch and brown trout fishery. It definitely affected that. But now these quagga mussels have brought a whole new game to us, and they have cleaned the lake, which I guess is for a good thing. But that's why the salmon plants and the alewife counts down and all that it's so clean and so clear. And that's why the northern part of the lake suffers, where they never used to, because the bait fish just doesn't have the food up there. It's competing with the quaggas, and that's got to run its course. The biologists tell us that it's about a 20-year cycle for quagga mussels and about a 10-year cycle for zebras to eat themselves out of house and home and check back and become part of the food chain. Normal, everything adapts itself. So we're kind of waiting this out with the alewife, which were, originally the goal was to get rid of them. Well, guess what? It's worked. But now it turned into such a sport fishery that, we want those kings. So by cutting the plants and getting ahead of the curve, after they saw what happened in Lake Huron, it's worked here in Lake Michigan. We still got a decent king fishery. You're not going to go out and catch 30 every trip like we did for some years, but you are going to get some nice kings, and they are bigger than they've been in years. There's a lot of 25, 30-pound fish being caught. Every week we're catching them like that.
Now, obviously, a 30-pound king gets the people in the business excited, but your average client out there, and I don't mean to demean them at all, but do they know the difference? Do they understand that a 15-pound king and a 30-pound king are two completely different critters? One's a real trophy, or is that 15-pound king a trophy to them?
Well, I don't have to tell you the difference in 8-point bucks. It's all in the eye of the beholder. But, if you go like we did here for a few hours this morning and then you catch a big king, that's the day. Let's face it. Mm-hmm. Everybody's getting the picture taken with it, everything, instead of everybody having a bunch of kings. And that still happens, don't get me wrong. It just doesn't last for months. It may last for weeks, and it may last for days. And they come and go, and we still have big catches of kings. It's not like they don't exist. But from kings, we're 70% of our catch. The statistics show over the years, for the last 30 years, 40 years, really. And that's not the case anymore. They've kind of traded roles, and there's more lake trout and coho makes up more of the catch now than the kings do. But the king still holds its weight in there.
Well, there's a reason they call the Chinook salmon the king, because he truly is the king of the fish that's out there.
Absolutely.
And hey, listen, Dave, how are you targeting these big kings differently? Years ago, it was downriggers and dipsy divers. How are you targeting these fish these days?
Well, that's probably hasn't changed. I would say more whiter dipsy divers, as you're talking about, divers, and probably the copper thing is a little more popular. Instead of lead core, we use copper. We can use half as much copper as we do. You have to use twice as much lead core to achieve the same depth. So they take their share, especially like this time of the day. As it gets late in the day for whatever reason, or you're going with the current or something, the coppers outfish the divers. We like to do a current into the current thing. You were asking, your original question was, what do you think? How do you do? Once we get this strong current from the south, which we always get every summer, the warm water pushing up the shoreline, we like to do a southerly troll into the current. And we definitely take more fish on the divers and stuff when we got a nice strong current.
If I remember right, you were one of the guys who pioneered this whole concept of using copper instead of lead core.
That's probably true. I got it from New York, where a guy named Ernie twisted it in his basement together. Now we use Morgan copper. Jim Bellman, the owner of the company. Morgan Copper's, made here. Well, it's actually in Indiana, distributed throughout Michigan. But he's very supportive of the Great Lakes fishery and stuff, and it's definitely a tool in our arsenal for catching big kings.
It's I don't know. I just look at how things have changed and how a guy like you has been able to not just survive but excel over these more than 4 decades. I got to ask you though, what role have tournaments played in this? Because I got to believe your bread and butter is your paid charter clients, but tournaments are really a way to get your name out there, at least in the early days, right?
Well, I don't know if you know it. My son takes care of this, so I haven't looked recently. But I think I've won 74 first place in tournaments in 4 different states.
Wow.
And including this year, I won the one I really wanted to win. I had been second 6 times in the Classic in Michigan City, Indiana. And I had a very dear friend from there. His name's Steve Creekbaum. We all called him Quake. And he was the father of that harbor. And he had been second 5 times, and neither one of us had ever won it. We've won a bunch of tournaments there, different ones. They have 3 in a month. We've won them all multiple times, but the Classic always got away from us. And mostly because of Steve, because he's such a great guy. Anybody and everybody, if you ask Steve where they're biting, what they're biting on, he will tell you. Well, I always told Steve everything I did all the time And he would just tell them. He just didn't care. He said, well, if they outfish me, they outfish me. So that's why we were always sucking, and somebody that would just show up in town that hadn't fished would end up beating us, you know? So Steve passed away from cancer very suddenly, just retired as a Michigan City fireman. Just a peach of a guy. There was no enemies in the world for Steve. And they renamed the tournament the Quake Classic. So winning that tournament this year, and it's also like we won like $15,000, so it's also a big money tournament. You know, it was the one thing, the one achievement in the fishery I hadn't achieved that I was so happy to do now. So tournaments played a big role this year for me. Just to answer your question.
Well, and you're competing though. You're competing against the best of the best, the cream of the crop. What is it that you do differently than a lot of these other guys to consistently finish so high up in the standings?
Well, just fishing every day is one of the things. You know, I mean, you're just fishing every day. But there are some very, very good tournament teams out there. They're not charter fishermen. These are guys with multi-million-dollar boats. There's a handful of them that travel to every single one. They have young guys that, you know, are enthusiastic and, you know, they're online constantly. They're asking every bite, every question, then they've got some really good groups together. There's nobody that dominates like the Finlander did originally, the Dreamweaver did for years, you know, myself and Bill. There's nobody that dominates the tournament circuit anymore. You just take one here and there, and I don't think we ever will with the way. But, you know, I go out fishing now and catch a bunch of fish, and before I get to shore, everybody knows what I've caught, how I've fished, and what I've done, and I haven't talked to anybody.
Well, so where's that coming from?
Well, customers, they're taking pictures and putting it on Facebook. They're,
gotcha.
You know, texting and, you know, that information to spread around. And we used to get a good rig or like the copper. You know, when you're the only guy that's got copper that whole summer, you're pretty good. You're the only guy that's got wire divers that whole summer, you're unbeatable. I mean, you're going to finish in the top couple. Yeah. So, you know, we still hold our own. There's no ifs, ands, or buts, but the information just spreads so much quicker. And for all good reasons. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing, but you still need a little niche to be consistent. If the fishing's tough, which it was down there, there was very few boats, like 3 of us that caught our limit both days. We caught it like 25 miles offshore. We never saw a boat both days. And Bill Bale fished with me, who was a longtime captain with me. Yeah. And he fished with me in that tournament for that reason. And he said, you know, I think this is the first time, Dave, I can ever remember being in first place the first day and never having a boat follow us out the second day. And I laughed at him and I said, well, Bill didn't know that, you know, that fishing was that tough inside, because he just showed up and fished with us in the tournament. And I said, they're going to regret they didn't, because we're going to have our limit.
And you
the
did.
Other guys are going to struggle. The other guys are going to struggle.
Dave, I got to let you go. Listen, it's always a pleasure. Congrats on your success over the years. The website, bestchance2.com. If you'd like to fish with Dave, I don't know. He's a popular guy, but you might give it a try. Go to the website, bestchance2.com. We'll take a break. When we come back, Nick Green from MUCC right here on Outdoor Magazine. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. My name is Mike Avery. Always glad to have you along with us. A reminder, you can hear the show on WBCK in Battle Creek. That's 95.3 FM. And in Sheboygan on Big Country Gold, WCBY AM and FM. That's 1240 AM and 100.7 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Speedy Blaze. Speedy Blaze is a safe, clean, water-resistant, insect-resistant alternative to firewood. You can use it in your grill, your backyard barbecue pit, your fireplace, your fire ring. Anywhere you can burn wood, you can burn Speedy Blaze, and you can cook over it. Check them out online at speedyblaze.com. That's speedyblaze.com. And did I mention It's a family-owned, Michigan-based company, and you know I love that. Want to check in now with Nick Green from MUCC, MUCC.org, MUCC.org, a group that I am a member of and proud to be so. Hey, Nick, welcome back to the show. It's been a while. How you doing?
We're doing well, Mike. We're kind of getting ready for the legislature to go on their summer break, and it's kind of a time for us to, at least our policy staff, to breathe a little bit, and our field programs are on the way. We got lots of on-the-water events coming up, so we're just kind of kicking off our summer season and looking forward to a little bit of reprieve from legislative work.
It'll be nice to get a little breath, won't it?
It will.
But I know you're not letting any moss grow under your feet, because I heard the other day about at least one thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was called the Sport Fishing Sweepstakes. Is that the name of it?
Yeah, so for the last several years, we've been kind of involved in the consent decree, Great Lakes consent decree negotiations, and these really kind of determine the outcome of how we manage our Great Lakes fishery from Grand Haven up around to Alpena and then kind of the northern shores of Lake Superior in relation to tribal fisheries and how the state allocates, recreational fishery numbers. So that's this big, long, convoluted process, but we're in the middle of it, and it's expensive to be a part of. So we had a charter captain donate a trip to us, and this is kind of the first time we've tried this, and we're doing an online sweepstakes. So you don't need to donate. You don't need to pay anything. There's no purchase required. However, donations do get you more entries into the drawing. So later on today, and by the time this airs, we should have that available on our website, MUCC.org. It'll be one of the floating banners at top. You can click on. It'll say Protecting Sport Fishing Sweepstakes. You click on that, and you can kind of get entered to win it. It's out of Traverse City, Captain Tony Radovich. Hope I'm not butchering his name. But we're excited for it. It's a cool platform. We're excited to see what we can do, down the road with this. But at the end of the day, it's all meant to support our legal defense fund, which is right now being primarily used during consent decree negotiations. It's also what we used when Governor Whitmer shut down motorboating. So it's really money we earmark and set aside for anything we may need to fight at the NRC and the legislature, anything of that nature.
Well, and this is a great reminder that these battles are not cheap. They're not free. It costs to fight for these issues.
Yeah, I mean, to give folks some perspective, our motorboat ban, I believe the bill from the attorney was somewhere around $50,000 to $60,000. And that never required litigation. That never saw a courtroom. That's just paperwork. And we worked with a lawyer, and he was great to work with us and kind of determine what, as a nonprofit, we could afford. And we used our legal defense fund for that. But yes, you're absolutely right. These things are not cheap when you have attorneys involved.
All right, and I'm not trying to blindside you here, and I know you can't say much at all, but this whole consent decree process, why is there such a gag order? Why is everything so tight-lipped about this? I mean, you'd think that the parties would want people to know what's going on, no?
In any negotiation, there's a fine line of how much information getting out is hindering a negotiation and how much is helping. So this negotiation is, as you said, very tight-lipped, and the thought is from the judge, from the federal government, from the parties involved, that any kind of public knowledge, weighing into this could kind of taint the negotiations, and, it doesn't really help parties put all their cards on the table and be transparent. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the thought behind it. We're just as frustrated as everyone else, and we have those non-disclosure agreements. But we just kind of have to wait, watch the process played out as it has years past, and hope that we'll come to some mutually beneficial kind of decree in the end here.
Well, it's too important of an issue to make a mistake and screw it up. I get that. What is there? I know there's no timetable, or is there? I mean, how long before we know something, Nick? What's your best guess?
So the recent extension runs through the end of the year, and the judge made it very clear in that extension that this is not just a rubber stamp for another extension. So that doesn't mean we might not have one again at the end of the year, but he was very forthcoming with saying, I want the parties to all get together. We need something figured out by the end of this year. So we're hoping in the next 6 months, in-person meetings are starting to be able to happen again. As you can imagine, anything in person helps negotiation.
Sure.
You can read people, you can see facial expressions, all of that. So we're hoping by the end of the year we'll have something more concrete to report. But until then, we're kind of all just flying by the seat of our pants and waiting to see what happens. All
right, Nick, I appreciate your candidness, and I appreciate you keeping an eye out for us sportsmen and women here in Michigan. The website is MUCC.org, MUCC.org. By the way, if you want to save 25% on your MUCC membership, use the promo code Mike, all caps, and you can save 25% on your MUCC membership, MUCC.org. The Ask Avery segment coming up. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Houghton Lake on the Twister 92.1 WTWS and a Powerhouse Station 98.5 WUPS. You can also hear us in Manistee on WMLQ 97.7 FM. And that's going to lead into this week's Ask Avery segment. But just a reminder, the Ask Avery segment is brought to you each week by the good people from Security Credit Union. Security Credit Union loves to work with outdoorsmen and women, and they can help you with your next outdoor adventure. Check them out online at securitycu.org. That's securitycu.org. And this is the point in the show where you have a chance to be involved in the programming. You can decide what topic is discussed. And the way that you do this is you get in touch with me. You can send me an email to mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. That's mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com, or hit me up on the social media outlets with a private message. Although I will tell you right now, I do prefer an email because there are so many different platforms and messaging platforms and private messages and texting. There's so much of that coming at me and you, right? I mean, there's so much of that comes at us these days that I'll be honest, it's sometimes hard for me to kind of keep track of it all. So an email, if you can, is probably the best option. Mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com, Mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. You can pose a question. You can ask me a question directly, or you can submit a question, suggest a question that you would like me to pose to somebody else. Maybe it's somebody in the DNR or something like that you might not have access to. This week's question, I can't attribute to any one particular person, but it's a couple of topics that I've heard a lot about the last couple of weeks. And number one is the question of radio affiliates. People say, how does this whole thing work? How do you get your affiliates? How come all of them don't carry all 3 hours of the show? And how come sometimes they air the wrong show? Well, it happens. Sometimes things happen. I will tell you this. One of my affiliates, WMLQ in Manistee right now, is having transmitter problems. I heard from people last week saying, I can't hear them. All I hear is static. They're not airing your show. Well, it's not just they're not airing my show. They're having transmitter problems. And if you get out of the city of Manistee proper, you can't hear the signal at all. They're working on that. Believe me, from their perspective, the Avery show is the least of their concerns. They want to get their transmitter up and running and get back to full power. So that's what's going on there. As far as affiliates who air all 3 hours of the show, I have no control over that. It's something that obviously I would prefer. I would like it if all of our affiliates can carry all or would carry all 3 hours of the show, but it's not a requirement. I would rather be in a market and have them carry 2 hours of the show than not be in a market. Those are my options. If they say, look, we want to take 2 hours, but we're not going to take all 3. Well, let's work. Let's work together because the podcast version of the show is always out there, and isn't it nice to know that? Now, as far as airing the wrong show, I will promise you that from this end right here, a newly updated, correct show is always updated, is always uploaded on this end. And I say on this end, I'm looking at Charlie Root here in the studio with me and me in the studio right now. On this end, a new show is always uploaded. I would not do this to you. I would not just walk away for a week and not do another show. There is no reason that I can think of, short of a family emergency, that I would not produce a new show. So if you hear a repeat show and I didn't say something about it coming up, there's been a technical glitch. But those things happen. There are a lot of moving parts in this whole puzzle. Sometimes there are technical problems. Sometimes it's at the network level. Sometimes it's at the local affiliate level. But things happen. I think we have a pretty good, pretty strong track record of success in having technical issues not be a problem here. So I'm pretty proud of that. But if you are hearing a different show, or if you're hearing a repeated show, please let me know. I can look into it and see if we can figure out, what the problem is, whether it was a one-time technical glitch or if it's something we're doing on our end, because it is my goal to bring you a new show every week with the best guests and content that I possibly can. And to wrap it all up, something else I hear about, Avery, how come you never talk about my part of the state? Well, the reason is, if I'm not talking about your part of the state, it's because I have no firsthand knowledge, I have no experience there, or I just, nobody's told me. I can only talk about the things that I know about, the things that I have done, the places I have been. If you've got something going on in your part of the world that you think I should know about, should talk about, be aware of, let me know. That's what Eric Lenz did from the Lake St. Clair Walleye Association in hour number 1. He reached out to me, and guess what? He was on the show this week. Again, I go back to the email, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. Let me know what's going on. Give me your questions, your comments, your concerns, something you would like me to talk about that I haven't. Hey, bring it up. We'll get a conversation going between us, and we'll see where it leads. I'm not slowing down. I'm not letting up. So if something isn't as it should be here, it's a mistake, because we're doing our best, and I can promise you that every week a new show, the best one I can make, right here on Outdoor Magazine.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay Sporting Goods, the Yider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polarcraft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Tree Stands, Shadow Hunter Blinds, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Indeed, this is the big guy, Mike Avery, and welcome to hour number 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine show, right here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network, as we celebrate the 4th of July weekend. How did it get to be the 4th of July? It was just Memorial Day. And you know what? Before you blink, it's going to be Labor Day. And then the summertime's going to be over. So as I've been saying throughout this entire show, don't let this summer slip away from you. There are things that you've been wanting to do, things you've been planning to do, things you've been dreaming about doing since last winter. Well, what are you waiting for? I know you're busy. You got to make the time. You got to make the time to do it. Don't let this summer season pass you by and go, man, we should have done it. Although I will admit, at the end of the summer season comes the fall hunting season. And for some reason this year, I'm really excited about the fall hunting season. And I don't really know why that is. We will know here now in Michigan Tuesday the 6th of July, on whether we got a Michigan bear or an elk tag. That, of course, I'm very excited about. I mean, man, if I could get a bear tag again this year, it'd be great. And a Michigan elk tag would be out of sight. But I'm also I'm also looking at this fall's archery season, and I am primarily a bow hunter. I mean, I have nothing against guns. I hunt with a gun occasionally. I love guns, but if I had a choice, I'd rather hunt with a bow than I would a gun. It's just me. I like the restrictions that it puts on you, and so much so that the last 2 or 3 years I've hunted with a recurve. Now, you want to talk about putting some restrictions on you. A guy at my level of proficiency with a recurve, it's like 15 yards or less. But I do find myself thinking that come this fall, I think, I'll still shoot the recurve for fun, but I don't think I'm going to hunt with it anymore. And I know you hardcore traditional archers think it's blasphemy that I think I'm going to go back to a crossbow. But you know what? It doesn't really matter. Recurve, longbow, compound, crossbow, we're all out there. We're all enjoying the sport, enjoying the hunt, enjoying the activity in the way that we want to, as long as it's legal, then I'm in favor of all of it. But I got thinking, number one, I don't know what crossbow I will shoot this fall. I'm leaning towards a Michigan-made Darton crossbow, but there are a lot of choices out there. And it's been a while since I've been in the world of compound bows as well. So I thought I wanted to check in this week with Kevin Pritchard. Kevin is the manager of the archery department at Jay's Sporting Goods Clair store. By the way, Jay's celebrating their 50th anniversary this year. And Kevin has graciously agreed to give us some time, and he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Kevin, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Hey, listen, I forgive my ignorance, but I didn't realize that you had, somewhat recently been named the manager of the archery department there at the Clair store. Congrats to you.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a long time coming.
You've been working there a long time, haven't you, my friend?
Yeah, I think I lost count after 20 years, so I'm 20-plus years now.
Well, that's really something, though, that you've worked in a retail shop like that for that long. What is it about Jay's that tends to hold people for a long time?
Man, it's got to be the owners. I mean, they're a great group of guys and girls to work for. They're family. Everything feels like family here.
Are you seeing interest in the archery department yet, or is it just a little too early?
No, it's not too early. We've been picking up. The sales are coming now, and everybody's realizing too with COVID, there's limited product. You got to get it while you can get it.
That was my next question. If the supply chain restrictions problems are still in effect.
Yes. We order from all over different states, so some states you can get stuff, some states you can't. Matthews bows, for instance, I mean, they're like over 4+ months out if you want a custom order, so you're kind of done now for the season if you want something special colors, but we still have a few in stock.
And that's an interesting point, Kevin. I've been talking a lot about the ammo shortage, the gun shortage, but taking it into the archery world, I hadn't really even thought about that.
Yeah, and it's not just bows. It's every product that goes with the bow.
So what are you seeing? What do you have there in the shop? What are you going to get in the shop? How does it look for this fall?
I think it's looking pretty good. The sights, we're still waiting for a bunch of them to come in. The high-end sights, Spot Hog Dimension 1 is really selling well, and they are hard to get. It's another company that's hard to get. I do have some lefties in stock. I do have some more coming from Spot Hog. But the sights are probably what I'm limited on the most right now. And, of course, there's some special colors on the bows, of course, but we do have enough to sell.
Wouldn't it be interesting to be in these manufacturers' shoes and know that every product you make is already got a home? It's already sold by the time you send it out the door. It's a good spot to be in, yet I'm sure they'd all like to be putting more product out the door.
I'm sure they would, yeah. I mean, I think it's just the employees, they can't put the stuff out. So hopefully they're going to start banging this product out and getting it to us so we can sell it for them.
Well, and as you say, some of these special orders and such, you're already too late for the fall season. But the other stuff, what's hot these days? Is it the same big three compound bow makers we hear about year after year? Anybody coming in from the outside? What are you seeing, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, it's still, of course, Matthews is they're backed up. They're always on top, number one. But Hoyt is right there with them, too. The new Hoyt carbon bows, the RX5, that's been selling really well, too. And then you get into the crossbow stuff. And, 10 Points came a long ways. They're giving Raven a run for their money now with their new cranking system. So they're right there, too.
How are your crossbow versus compound sales?
I was just looking at that earlier. In the last 30 days, it's been probably 60% compounds and 40% on the crossbows.
That's actually a little bit.
There's a time, where your crossbow guys all come in at the last minute. So the sales will pick up on that. So
that's because the knock on the crossbow guys is because we're lazy.
Yep.
I didn't expect you to agree.
I agree there. Because I'll shoot a crossbow occasionally too in the late season, and I can get it up the last minute. So,
well, isn't that one of the benefits, though? It's one of the knocks on crossbows, but it's also one of the benefits that you don't need to spend all summer shooting them to be proficient. And anybody can shoot one. I mean, there's pros and cons, but I say whatever gets people out there,
Right. I agree.
Hey, you were talking about Matthews. That's a name that's been around forever. What is it? This might put you in a tough position because of where you are there. But are Matthews really that good of a bow, or are they just good at marketing their product?
Yeah, they're definitely good at marketing. But it's just as good as bow as the next bow, But I agree. It has to be into the marketing. I shoot a Hoyt, for instance, but I sell Matthews, too. I agree. Matthews has some features I like, and then Hoyt has features I like, too. So you can't go wrong with either manufacturer you go with. They're all good bow today.
Well, and does that extend across the board? I mean, if are today's bows better than they were, 10 years ago?
Yes, definitely. There's less hand shock in them now. When you shoot them now, it's like, did I just release that?
Really?
They're super smooth. Big difference.
And this has been true for the last several years now. Is there really a reason for anybody to shoot a 70-pound compound anymore?
I don't think so. I've been shooting 60 pounds for years, and it seems like, when my shoulders are good, I might creep up 63, 64, and that'll be about it. But heck, the wintertime comes, I'm dropping it back down to like 58 just so I can ease my shoulder a little bit. The colder it gets, the longer you sit in that stand, you know what happens. You go in to draw a big buck and you can't draw it.
Yeah. Are you better off to shoot a bow near the high end of its weight or the low end of its weight class?
A lot of guys think, too, that it still has the best performance at the peak weight. And it probably does, but I ordered a 70-pound bow last year, turned it down to 62 when I first got it. And, I can pull 70. It's not a problem. I'm not comfortable doing it because if I need to get in an awkward position, I can't pull it smoothly. Mm-hmm. So I drop it down. And I dropped it down to 62, and I think it went down to 60-ish last winter. And, I think it shot just as good as it did there as it did at 70. I physically can't see a difference. I can see, speed, of course. Yeah, you may be able to extend your yardage a little bit because your arrow's shooting a little flatter.
We're talking with Kevin Pritchard, the manager of the archery department at Jay's Sporting Goods in Clair. A reminder, Jay's is celebrating their 50th anniversary. And there's a big celebration coming up the first weekend after Labor Day, so keep that in mind. The website, jsportinggoods.com, jsportinggoods.com. We got to take a break. More with Kevin Pritchard getting ready for archery season right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Holland on WHTC, AM and FM, 1450 AM, 99.7 FM. And you can hear us in Lansing on WILS, 1320 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Rapid River Knife Works. Rapid River Knife Works, a Michigan-based family-owned company. You know I love that. You've got a knife in your pocket right now, don't you? I'll bet you do. If not, you often carry a knife in your pocket, or certainly when you're hunting and fishing, you've got a knife with you. Why not make it a Michigan-made knife from Rapid River Knife Works? Coincidentally, Rapid River Knife Works was just commissioned to do a 50th anniversary knife for the folks at Jay's Sporting Goods. So they're working together, and I'm working with both of them, and I couldn't be happier. If you're in the UP, swing by Rapid River and check out the showroom. It's absolutely beautiful. We will do a Wednesday night live from there sometime late summer, early fall. And at least check out the website for sure, rapidriverknifeworks.us, rapidriverknifeworks.us. I was talking about the Rapid River and Jay's connection because I'm talking right now with Kevin Pritchard, who is the manager of the archery department at Jay's Clair store. Kevin, before the break, you mentioned something about speed. It used to be that speed was the only thing we looked at in a bow. It didn't matter how hard it shot, what kind of hand shock. We wanted a fast shooting bow. And then we went to a comfortable bow with less emphasis on speed. Where are we today?
Well, their speed it may have slowed down a little bit. I mean, of course, there's still a couple bows that are super fast, but they are in that. My new Hoyt is in it's the smoothest Hoyt I've ever owned. As far as drawing, the easiest holding let off, and the least you're going to get for vibration in them.
I don't know how these companies continue to tweak these products, because you think some of these compounds and these crossbows, you think, how much more can they build into them?
That's what I keep thinking.
I want to go back.
They keep improving.
Well, and they do, and it's good for the industry. It's good for everybody. How often is the average bow hunter buying a new bow these days at prices over $1,000? The people aren't coming in every year to get a new bow, are they?
Well, we have the select few that do. They got to have the latest and greatest of the new products. And I'm one of them guys, too. Of course, I get a couple little benefits by working here with Jay's.
Sure.
But no, we do have some regulars that buy a new bow every year. And then we have guys every few years. And now I just sold yesterday. I had a local guy, business owner downtown, and it's been 10 years, and he wanted a new Hoyt carbon bow, and he shot it. He's like, oh, my gosh, I can't believe the difference. I'll take it. So there has been big improvements. I was
going to say, I bet there was a big difference in his 10-year-old bow versus that new one.
Yep. Yes.
Hey, Kevin.
If you're over 10 years, get a new one.
Come to Jay's and get a new one.
Yep.
Kevin, you know I love to promote Michigan companies. I was just talking about Rapid River Knife Works and Jay's, of course, being a Michigan company. Could you set up? Could you get a new bow and arrows and broadheads and everything and sights and everything and be all set up with just Michigan companies and get a good, solid setup?
Well, by the time you do some of the accessories on the bow, of course, are not in Michigan, but there's got to be somebody in Michigan. I know G5, their broadheads are awesome. I shoot them, and they're right here, and I believe it's Memphis, Michigan.
Memphis. Then you've got Zeus, and you've got Rec now out of Frankenmuth. So you got three choices in broadheads right there, at least.
Yeah, the sight company is a different story, though. I can't think of any in Michigan, or the rest as far as that goes. You were mentioning the knives. I have one of them Rapid River knives, and they are one of the sharpest knives I've ever owned.
I just ordered one for a guy, and I'm going to order one for myself, too, because I hear nothing but good things about those. And isn't it cool to have a 50th anniversary edition of that knife out there now?
Yes, I have not seen that yet. That's sold next door in my hunt department, which I just deal with the bow stuff. But yeah, I'm curious to see that one because I have not seen that one yet. I have seen their store. I was up there last summer, and you got to stop there. If you're in the UP, you need to stop.
I know. I've heard the same thing. I got to get up there and see that for sure. All right, so let's talk about crossbows for a minute. I am actually somewhat surprised that crossbow sales have held up to the level that they have, because I was thinking that, obviously once they became legal across the board, there'd be a big sales of them. But I thought that over the years they would die off to a smaller percentage of sales than what they are. It's actually kind of surprising me how popular they still are, Kevin.
Yes, I think there's still a lot of new people getting into it, and it's an easy way in. And there's people that just never bow hunted before that always gun hunted, and those guys and gals are getting into it, and it's easy.
Well, at least one company I saw, and this really bothers me, they advertised the crossbow as your next rifle, and I thought, doggone it, don't blur that line anymore. Don't go down that road.
No, by any means, it's not even close to a rifle.
Yeah. And didn't I see, too, that one company has come out with I don't want to call it a dual shot, but they've got a second arrow, a second bolt right there ready to go?
Yes, that's my Excalibur. It's kind of cool. If you miss, of course, yes, you can. It has two triggers, basically two barrels, one on top of each other, and you can get a second shot off in a big hurry.
Is that going too far, Kevin?
Just a little bit, in my opinion.
Again, I appreciate that. So
I only need one shot.
Well, hey, listen, isn't that the crux of bow hunting, that it is a single shot tool? I mean, to me it is, because you got to make that first shot count, and then you got to either reload or redraw or whatever, but to have a second arrow or bolt right there, in my mind, kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah, it does feel. I haven't hunted with one of those, but that does. It feels like you're cheating a little bit, I think.
Although, if we look at it from this point too, if the goal of any hunter should be a quick, clean, humane kill, I guess anything that allows us to do that, maybe we should look at it in a better light. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to say.
Yeah. Well, and listen, you didn't want to have that conversation with me today anyway. I get that. So let's talk about
more of a compound game.
Well, I know that. So what should we look for? Okay, if somebody comes into Jay's these days and they're looking for a new bow, help me out. What are you going to try to get out of that person, and what should the customer coming in the door, what information should they have to make sure they get the right bow?
The main thing, draw length and poundage. Is it a guy? Is it a gal? Are they growing? Of course, if they're growing, you want to get them in one of the grow with you bows. There's a bunch of manufacturers that make them. I mean, they'll go 15 to 70 pounds, anywhere from 15 to 30-inch draw, all built into one bow, so that was a good bow to grow with. And price is of course, another thing. You want to kind of feel the customer out and see how much they want to put into a bow. Like you said, you can spend $1,000 on a bow, and you don't have your accessories yet, so that could add up really quick. So pick your price point.
Can you? I don't know. The guys at Bow Hunter Planet, I was griping about the prices of bows, and they said, "Hey, take a look at the medium tier bows. You can get them for a lot less, and the technology is only a year or two behind. So it's actually a pretty darn good deal to go that way." Do you agree with that, Kevin?
I agree. Yep, I agree, because we have a Hoyt package, for like $700, and it is so close to the $1,000 bow with nothing on it, and it shoots great, and it's a solid bow, and it has everything on it ready to go.
I've always been a little nervous about getting a package, whether it was like a muzzle loader or a bow. But you say this one's legit?
Yeah, so like I say, there's some packages that have better quality accessories than others, so you definitely want to look at that too. So there's options.
What about choices of arrows these days? I mean, I can't believe anybody is still shooting aluminum, at least not very many people. But what are we looking for in arrows? Is it strictly a price thing at this point because all the carbon shafts are so similar?
It's not really. A lot of guys now are looking for the small diameter arrows, and there's a lot of companies making them now. The East End's making one now, the Axis 4mm, which is really small diameter, and they're a match grade arrow. They are pricey, but yeah, the small diameter seems to be the key today.
What's the thinking there? What's the advantage? Because I'm thinking back to the early days of carbon shafts when the Beemans were so small you had to put an outsert on them instead of an insert.
Right, and that's kind of the way this new one is. It's like an insert/outsert, so it does go in the shaft and over the shaft. But your smaller diameters at long distance seem to hold up in the air better, and they also penetrate and slip through that animal a little cleaner too and faster.
Yeah. Well, for those people who are listening who are archers or bow hunters, I mean, you get it. It's an intimate sport, even a crossbow. I don't care. It's a one-shot, close-range tool. I think it's an intimate, beautiful, up-close and personal sport. And I would encourage people, Kevin, if they're looking at a new bow or thinking about it, come on in at Jay's and stop by and see you and the rest of the crew there at Jay's and Clair.
There you go. Yeah, I agree.
I figured you would. All right, Kevin, always a pleasure. I'll get up and see you in person here sometime soon.
All right. Thank you, Mike.
All right, Kevin Pritchard, the manager of the archery department at Jay's Clair store. Don't forget there's also a Gaylord store. You can learn more about both online at jayssportinggoods.com. That's jayssportinggoods.com. I also do a Jay's Sporting Goods podcast, and I suspect that we'll probably have Kevin on that here in the next month or so as well as we get ready for the archery season. Some big part of me still wants to stay with that recurve. I admit it. But another part of me says, look, if you're not as good with that thing as you want to be and can't shoot as heavy a poundage as you want, is it just, I don't know. Let me think this through a little bit. I might talk about a little bit more about it in the next segment. If not, I've got a few other things on my mind. You know I always do because, hey, that's how I can sit here for 3 hours each week right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Ludington on News 97.98, 98.7 WLDN. And you can also hear us in Saginaw on WSGW AM and FM. That's 790 AM, 100.5 FM. I'm in the studios of WSGW right now, although during this 3-hour period, this corner of the studios are known as the Outdoor Magazine studio, and I can prove it. I got a sign behind me that says so. I'm also in here with Charlie Root, and he verifies it. Charlie waving once again to the adoring crowd. You know, it's funny because the crowds don't show up when Pat Johnston does the show, only when Charlie does. And they're standing outside right now in the parking lot. You might be able to hear them. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Reader Landscaping. Reader can take care of your lawn and property because it's your nature and our nurture. Let Reader create an outdoor getaway in your backyard, as they have for us at the Avery house. They've done a lot of work for us back there, including a water feature. Really makes it what did our neighbor boy came over there today and says, you know, this is a very relaxing environment. I'm like, Austin, you're smart beyond your years, dude. Check them out online at readerlandscaping.com. That's Reader, R-E-D-E-R, landscaping.com. So it is the 4th of July weekend, Independence Day. Hope you are able to make the most of it. I hope you are able to make the most of this second half of the summer coming up. Michigan bear and elk permits will be unveiled on Tuesday. I will be online literally at 12:01, michigan.gov/DNR 12:01. I'll either stay up or get up to check and see if I got my bear tag. Fishing has been good. I got my walleye mojo back. I was struggling earlier in the summer on those deeper water fish because my beloved skinny water had gone so dead because of the clear, super clear water. Actually getting some fish now up in the skinny water. Last weekend did real well up in there, but it was an interesting day because it was stormy and it was foggy and it was blowing and it was raining like crazy, so the light levels were pretty low in there. I think that might have had something to do with it. But spending as much time on Saginaw Bay on the angler quest as I possibly can. As I say, the fishing's been pretty good. The weather's been crazy, though, hasn't it? Between storms and rain and wind and plagues and pestilence, blood falling from the sky. Man. But when we can get out, it has been really good. Flicker shads, spoons, actually hooked somebody's lead core. Hooked somebody's lead core second to last time I was out. And it still had a fish on it, which was kind of cool. And it wasn't an old rotten fish that had been there for a while. It was a fresh fish. Like somebody hooked it that morning, broke their lead core off, and we came along and hit their lead core a couple hours later and got their fish too. On a different trip, one of my offshore or 12 boards, the line broke, the fishing line broke. I'm not quite sure how that happened yet. So we had to kind of do a planer board rodeo, and that means you turn the boat around. And keep in mind, you got several boards out on both sides, so you can't make a real tight turn. You got to do a slow, gradual turn, yet you got to keep your eye on where the board that broke off is so you can go recover it. We got up there to that, scooped it up with a net, and then I realized there was a fish on the other line to that as well, so got the hand line that in. That was kind of fun. But I'm really enjoying this summer. Really enjoying it. The word is now, lately you know this by now, but Ontario has extended their border closure by at least a month. I think that effectively shuts down any chance of bear hunting in Ontario this year. Arizona Fish and Game voted to ban trail cameras. They say it's it's not a fair chase. They say it eliminates the fair chase concept of hunting. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I sure hate to see basically a state DNR and come in and ban the use of trail cameras. But at least the Arizona DNR has that authority. When you compare that to the Kalamazoo County Commission, who voted to oppose hunting contests, it's like why are you even worried about that? Kalamazoo County Commissioners, why are you even worried about that? Are you telling me there's nothing more important going on in your county that needs your attention? There's no funding problems. There are no problems with roads. There's no infrastructure problem. The county sheriff doesn't need money. The jail doesn't need money. There's nothing else you have to worry about other than voting to oppose hunting contests. Come on. And finally, a reminder, check out the website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That's MikeAveryOutdoors.com. I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, probably everything else that's out there. And you can always reach me. And I'd love to have you do this. Please, this is a serious request on my part. I do want to hear from you. I want to know what you're thinking. I want to know about topics you would like to see covered. I want to know about areas of your state that I may not talk about much just because I don't know much about them. Send me an email to Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com and let's talk about it. Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Eric Lenz from the Lake St. Clair Walleye Association did that earlier a couple of weeks ago, and he was on the show this week. Now, I'm not saying you're going to end up on the show, but it certainly is a possibility. Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Wild Game Chef Dave Minar coming up. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. My name's Mike Avery. Glad to have you along with us, and always glad to check in with wild game chef extraordinaire Dave Minar. Been working with Dave for many, many years, and he's a big part of the Outdoor Magazine radio show as well. David, my friend, welcome back. How are you?
Very nice, Mike, and yourself?
I'm doing great. What do you have in mind for us this week, Dave?
I was in a bait shop the other day, and I noticed they had them little small wire traps to catch crawfish with. Crawdad.
Yeah.
And it made me look. So I got a flashlight the other day, and I went down at our pond, and I looked around by the lily pads, and there was crawfish crawling around. So it made me think about this. So.
Mm-hmm.
And we sell them at the restaurant, too, so that kind of was a helpful hint also. So when you catch them, you can set them traps, bait them with a chicken liver, a dead minnows or something like that, and then keep them in clean water, no chlorination. You want to use, like, well water before the softener if you're going to keep them and get a bunch of them that way, or just keep them in a wire cage so that they'll clean out, so they're not around the mud. And so, or you can walk along the shore at night with a headlight and a little net and shoo them backwards into that net with a little stick. So what you want to do is to steam them, you're going to just bring a pot of water up to boil, and then place the crawdads in a strainer over the water. And you can put some beer in there, too. That would be good. Sprinkle them with the Old Bay seasoning or a crab boil or Cajun spice or cayenne, kind of give them a little flavor, and then you put a cover on it after you set them in the strainer over the boiling liquid. And when they're all nice and red, you can stir them around a little bit. It doesn't take all that long, maybe 5 to 8 minutes, maybe, depending on how many you're going to put in there. So what you're going to do then is the old saying goes, you pinch the tails and suck the heads. Take and separate the body from the tail, and the tail part, you can hold that upside down in between your fingers and your thumbs, pull it backwards and break it, and then the meat usually just pops right out. And boy, it takes a lot of them to feed people. I'm telling you what. You could dip it in butter or lemon juice or cocktail sauce is good. And so that's one way to do it. And another way is after you get them all cleaned up like that, you get the meat out, sprinkle them with either cayenne or Cajun, and then you're going to make a beer batter, a real thin batter of dry drakes and beer, and then dry drakes again. So you're going to put them in the dry drakes, shake them off real good, put them in the beer batter, kind of squeeze them out, most of the liquid off, put it back in the dry drakes, and that forms a real thin crust, but it gives you a lot of flavor, And so 2 minutes or so in a deep fryer, 350 degrees, or if you got a pan on the stove with about an inch or so of oil, you can do that too. Just don't crowd them and do them in batches. So they come out just unbelievably good. I know you love them. I love them.
Oh, my gosh.
We sell a lot of them at the restaurant.
They're some of the most addicting little food items I've ever had. I mean, I've never seen anybody have a plate in front of them that didn't love those things, Dave.
I know. People think, oh, crawfish. Well, they're like little bitty lobsters, and to me, the flavor is almost the same.
Yeah. And where do you get these? You say we've got them right here wild in Michigan?
Everywhere around. Or you can get them a lot of real good seafood places. Seafood shops would have them. You can buy them by the pound in grocery stores like Kroger's or Meijer's in the freezer section, already cleaned for you. But, as a kid, we used to go to Fletcher's Pond a lot. And my dad made these little traps like I was telling you about, kind of squared, kind of flatter, and then they had cone-shaped wires going in so they could crawl in and really have a hard time finding their way out. So we always did this as kids. We used them for bass bait and ate them.
And you say in the stores they sell them as crayfish?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they're actually farm-raised in Louisiana. Down there in the bayous, they do that same trapping system, and they harvest them that way. They make it real easy for them to grow and get larger. The ones down south are quite a bit larger than the ones up here.
Yeah, it takes a few of them to make a meal, doesn't it? These Michigan ones.
Oh, yeah. It's more of an appetizer than sitting down to. But then again, if you get a lot of them, you can, steam them all up, put them in the middle of the table, and let everybody pick away at it.
I've seen you do that more than once.
Yes.
Oh, they're excellent. Have you had a chance to do anything fun, Dave? You been out fishing at all?
No, just getting ready to open up. That's
What?
it.
What?
Yeah, what? Yep. We're shooting for right around the 8th or a little bit before.
Oh,
All
no
of our
kidding.
permits and everything have come in, and we're just about ready.
Well, I was reluctant to bring it up because I didn't know what the status is. Had I known that, we would have started the conversation with it. That's very exciting, Dave.
Oh, it is, It's a lot of work and all of that, but we still need a waitress and maybe one cook.
All right. Well, I will look forward to stopping by, and
We pay good.
I'll look forward to stopping by and saying hi. I'll wish you luck in finding your help, and we'll talk again next week, Dave.
Thank you very much. Enjoy the crawfish if you get them.
Oh, my goodness. They are so good. Wild Game Chef Extraordinaire Dave Minar, a big part of the Outdoor Magazine show, as are you. I do appreciate you being along with us. Hey, listen, join me during the week on the different social media outlets. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff. You can always send me an email, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. Check out the website, mikeaveryoutdoors.com. In the meantime, have a great 4th, have a great week, and I'll talk to you next time right here on Outdoor Magazine.